Welcome back into the Dynasty Nerds YouTube page. I am your host, Garrett Price, and I am really excited today because we have a fun topic. We are going to be talking about players that were pretty low on our rankings or maybe weren't even relevant in our rankings that have risen up to become legitimate fantasy football assets. And I get to talk about that with my guy, Austin Abbott. Austin, how you doing, man?
What's going on, Garrett? First off, man, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on. I want to be very vocal and transparent. I probably got into Dynasty about 5-6 years ago, roughly. And ironically, the Dynasty Nerds, the very first Dynasty podcast that I started listening to, that's a fact. So for you to reach out to me maybe 6 years later, it was just awesome, man. It was like a full circle moment. And it's just truly a pleasure to speak with you. I'm just excited to talk ball.
That's awesome, man. Well, I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy that, we've been a part of your life for a long time. And I know you and I have communicated over the years on DM, on Twitter and stuff like that. And just following you, I mean, you grinded for a long time and you've grown your account to really, really impressive levels. So bravo to you for that. So if people want to follow this meteoric rise that you're having on Twitter, how do they find you on there?
Yep, at Austin Abbott FF. I really do appreciate the plug, man. Just doing my best to pump out Dynasty content. Already starting to dive into the 2025 rookies. It's kind of my favorite. That's kind of my favorite. I'm not gonna lie, is all the rookie content. But hey, we're still in only week 11, right? We're still in the thick of things. So full, a ton of redraft content I'm pumping out right now. But one step at a time, one day at a time, man. We're getting close to that 2025 class, so I'm not gonna lie, I'm pumped for it. So
I hear you, dude, and I'm with you. I think most dynasty players, if they're honest, like the season's cool and all, but like we low key live for
yeah,
the off season. That's why we're like such degenerates.
100%, 100%.
Love it, dude. All right, so we're gonna be talking about some guys that have just climbed up our rankings. For some of them, it might be a steady climb. For others, it might just be skyrocketing up. But give me one of the guys that you have that you would say, yeah, this guy's been a huge riser in my rankings.
Yeah. So the first player that comes to mind, Josh Downs, wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. So look, man, like people like Josh Downs somewhat heading into 2024. He was probably, I would say, by consensus, viewed as the wide receiver 3, right? Of course, you had Michael Pittman Jr. candidly in front of him. Even Adonai Mitchell, I think if you talk to most people, they would say,
Yeah.
they spent day two draft capital, second round. AD's probably the 2, according to a lot of people, right? I personally thought Josh Downs needed way more respect put on his name this offseason. And here's why. Josh Downs, his rookie campaign, man, wildly impressive. And people don't even realize that, right? He set the Colts franchise record for most receptions by a rookie with 68, right? Now, when you think about the Colts historic franchise, Garrett, all the legendary Hall of Fame wide receivers that they've had, whether it's Marvin Harrison, whether it's Reggie Wayne, Raymond Berry, and then you've got other guys who've had immense production initially, like T.Y. Hilton, Michael Pittman Jr., Pierre Garcon, like the list goes on. I'm just naming a few. And
Yeah.
Josh Downs, man, he stands on top of that list. The craziest part, Garrett, he accomplished all of this with Gardner Minshew, a backup quarterback for the majority of the season, right? So I want to actually change direction here. I want to talk about what has he done for us lately in 2024. Josh Downs, like let's talk advanced analytics for a minute, right?
Do it.
They've improved drastically. He ranks first in the NFL in win rate, right? 64.9%. I mean, that right there in itself is just a little golden nugget. Third in the NFL in win rate versus man. He also ranks third in the entire NFL in target rate at 32.5%, right? And now, in terms of yards per route run, I know it's everybody's favorite metric, or at least it seems to be that way on Twitter. That
Sure.
2.00 metric, or that 2.00 threshold, I should say, is kind of where people like to see wide receivers at. He's at 2.38, right? And for context, that's better than CeeDee Lamb, who's sitting at 2.08. Amon-Ra St. Brown sitting at 2.07. Like Neighbors at 2.03. Drake London 2.02. Again, Josh Downs at 2.38 yards per route run. Just that has a really strong correlation to NFL and fantasy success. And Garrett, as we wrap up Josh Downs, the media doesn't want you to know that he had his best fantasy performance with Anthony Richardson under center this season. So
All right.
getting back to your initial point, Garrett, Josh Downs is one of the players who's significantly risen up my dynasty rankings.
I love it. I love it. So right now today, like what range of wide receiver would you be comfortable if you had to draft today for your dynasty team? Like what range would you feel comfortable taking a guy like Josh Downs?
So we're talking dynasty startup draft, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Super flex.
Yeah, so he's probably around in the mid 20s for me right now, amongst the wide receivers. I view Josh Downs really close to like the T Higgins, like
Yeah.
DJ Moore, like
That's fair.
man, I know people are down on Jalen Waddle. I still have love for him. Devonta Smith, in that range is kind of where I would put Josh Downs. I don't think he's terribly far off. Even like a guy like Debo Samuel, man. I mean, Josh Downs just checks so many boxes. You know, he's going to get a big second contract if he continues to play the way that he currently is. He's so young. I love the gradual improvement that we've seen him take from year one to year two.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a fantastic one. And one of my first guys, and we didn't discuss it beforehand, so these are surprises. So hopefully we don't steal any from each other. But if so, we can just build on top. We can just build on top. But one of the guys for me is Cedric Tillman. Cedric Tillman, a guy last year was a rookie, came out and was more or less a flop. And we see this from time to time. And it's tricky because we know some of these metrics are really important. One of the ones being if a guy doesn't hit 500 yards in his rookie campaign, well, the odds are that he's not ever going to be a fantasy relevant wide receiver. In fact, over all the receivers that have been drafted from the years 2010 through 2020, only 2.5% of the guys that did not hit 500 yards as a rookie ended up being truly fantasy relevant players. So we knew that he had an uphill battle to climb, but he was a guy that I liked as a prospect. So I wasn't quite willing to give up. But then this year starts and it's more of the same. Not getting a lot of targets, not really involved in this offense, not doing anything. Well, traditionally, you wouldn't think losing your starting quarterback would elevate you, but that's really what happened with Cedric Tillman. You add that in the fact that Amari Cooper, who we know is a very talented wide receiver, got shipped off to Buffalo, but everyone was talking about, okay, well, this is Elijah Moore's time to shine, or Jared Judy's going to step up and be the X. Now it was Cedric Tillman. Over the past 3 weeks on a points per game basis, outside of the crazy Jamar Chase game, he's been the top wide receiver for fantasy football. So he's been really, really good. 3 straight games of 6 or more receptions. He's been averaging over 10 targets per game over that stretch, and he's scored 3 touchdowns in those 3 games. So he went from nothing, nobody, not worth a thing in Dynasty, I'll give you a fourth for him kind of guy, to a player that now, like, we're in the conversations of potentially first round pick if you want to try to get him off somebody's team. So he has just flown up my boards. And this is also a team here where it's wide open. It would not surprise me if he had the opportunity to still continue to be the top receiver on this team moving forward. We'll see what they do at the quarterback position. Obviously, they're going to have to address it somehow, some way. We'll wait and see. But what are your thoughts on Cedric Tillman?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it, Garrett. You know, the wide receiver 1 overall in fantasy points from week 7 to 9. He ranked first in targets. Like, that was very telling at 32, fifth in yards at 255, and second in touchdowns with 3, right? At 22.2 points per game in that span, that also ranked first in the NFL. And it's always interesting, right? Like, I think first year, in terms of production for any player, right? That in itself is something that I put a lot of weight into, right? It really matters a lot for me just in terms of how I view players moving forward in Dynasty, right?
Sure.
Your rookie campaign really does matter way more than you probably think. Like you mentioned, you ripped off that stat with the 500-yard mark threshold.
Yeah.
And it's true, man. Like, that's a fact. So the fact that and look, like we play Dynasty, there's never going to be a perfect formula. That's the beautiful thing about it.
Yep.
He's an outlier by definition at this point. And he's a type of outlier, though, the type of prospect that not only do we like, but you want to bet on, right? So there's just so much that's appealing about his profile. And I believe that it's just going to continue to improve his situation. That is right. Whether it's quarterback play, the wide receiver room right now is pretty damn empty. It's just he's found himself in a great situation. So I love that. I love that call by you. And well, would you like me to go pivot to my next player?
Do it, my guy.
All right. So the second player that I want to yap about today, it's Chuba Hubbard. Right now, the first thing I want to say about Chuba Hubbard, I'm genuinely so happy for him. I mean, he was left for dead, Garrett. Right? This is
Oh yeah.
this is this. It felt like he was at an all time low in terms of value, and whether it was Dynasty. Actually, I low key really liked him a lot in redraft this year, but the Panthers, they spend a second round draft capital on him. Right, 46th overall, second round pick, just a few months ago. Jonathan Brooks still has not taken an NFL snap. Is he a real human being? Does he exist, Garrett? Like, I genuinely don't know, man. We haven't seen him. We thought he might be ready for week 1. We thought he'd be ready by week 4. Here we are heading into week 11. They got a bye, so we won't even see him till week 12 at the earliest. So it's just wild how much has changed over the past few months. Chuba secured the bag. Again, I am so happy for him. A 4-year, $33 million extension. And listen to this. So his contract, Chuba, that is, I thought it was very telling. I just simply want to say that Carolina clearly loves him. And I say that because that $8.3 million, that's what he's getting paid this year, $8.3 million. That's more than what Derrick Henry's getting. That's more than what DeAndre Swift is getting, Aaron Jones, Tony Pollard. And these are all some really big name free agent running backs
Yeah.
over this past offseason that got very nice contract extensions. So for Carolina, their actions speak louder than words, and the fact that they've given Chuba more money than all these other superstar running backs annually tells you exactly how they feel about him. And to be honest with you, like Chuba, we're talking about a 25-year-old guy that's 6'1", 210, and Carolina's done a great job developing him, right? Dan Morgan, the Panthers' current general manager, he was actually hired by the Panthers to be their assistant GM just 3 weeks after they drafted Chuba. So he wasn't in on it. He was still with Buffalo at the time, but he comes in 3 weeks later. And let's fast forward to January of 2024. You've got Dan Morgan, who was hired by the Panthers as the president of football operations, right? And then he goes takes over as the GM as well. He replaced Scott Fitterer. So I say all that, Garrett. I say all that to say that the Panthers and Dan Morgan, they truly do value Chuba very highly. And I want to touch on some numbers though. So let's get into the fun stuff regarding Chuba. We're seeing him take gradual leaps across the board in yards per carry, going from 3.8 to 5.1, right? Really good progress right there. That's what we want to see. He's actually on pace for 1,391 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns and 325 touches. That might be the most wild stat right there. Like, we're talking about the epitome of a workhorse. And man, like, we haven't even gotten to his receiving numbers yet, which are also highly impressive, right? He's 7th in receptions amongst all running backs, 9th in targets, 10th in routes run. And he's got, ready for this, just 3 less receptions than Marvin Harrison Jr. Okay, so
Wow.
Chuba Hubbard, he's been a beast in 2024. And again, I just want to wrap it up by saying I'm so happy for him. I hope he continues to prove everyone wrong. He's been running pissed off all season. His story, it's far from finished. Shout out to Chuba Hubbard, man. What a dog.
Yeah, he's been really good. He's been really good this year, and that's one of those ones that I'll have to take a little bit of an L on because I didn't believe in him necessarily as a player, and when things kind of fizzled out and they brought in Miles Sanders and drafted Jonathan Brooks, I wasn't that surprised. I was like, yeah, Chuba Hubbard's a really good backup, but I don't know if he can be a starter. Well, it looked like I was proven wrong. He has been fan freaking tastic this season. He has done nothing but chew up yards on the ground, through the air, getting in the end zone, which is really impressive for how bad this offense has been. For him to still be that effective as a running back, really, really impressive. So right now, I think, are you still, now his value is higher than it's ever been. Are you still willing to buy him right now with the thought that maybe people still aren't valuing him quite to the level that he should be?
So when I think of Chuba Hubbard, I think he's a hold more than anything at this point,
Okay.
right? And I'll tell you what, like if I'm in win now, if my team's doing well, if I'm a true contender, I'm just gonna hold and continue to win with him, man. I mean, he had what 169 scrimmage yards, led the NFL in rushing yards this past week, right? It's not a fluke, man. We're heading into week 11. He's just getting better and better and better again. And I'll tell you what, I'm not even worried when Jonathan Brooks comes back. At least in 2024, I'm not worried, man. I'm riding Chuba into the ground this season. I am all in on Chuba this year. So, in terms of like dynasty value, if man, I would probably need a mid first, and I bet you I couldn't get that. I would probably need around a mid first. I don't even think I would sell him for a very late first. Maybe
I
I'm
can't
a
blame you.
little not. Maybe I'm a little naive. Maybe I'm a little crazy, but man, I want to win. So I'm holding Chuba, and he's just going to continue to play a vital role in for my fantasy teams or dynasty teams, whatever it may be.
Love it. Love it. Well, you went with a running back, so I'll go tit for tat here. We'll go running back. I'm going to go with Tyrone Tracy. It felt a little weird to pick a rookie for this segment
Mhm.
because, like, how high can a rookie go? But like sleeper on when it came to draft day, right after the NFL draft, sleeper's ADP comes out. He doesn't have an ADP. Like it's in the 2000s. Like all of these guys are getting taken leaps and bounds ahead of him, and Sleeper like forgot about this guy. He was really kind of an afterthought, 5th-round pick, former receiver that just played 1 year of running back at Purdue, which is not a university that's known for putting out these like top tier running backs. He was the truest form of an afterthought. He climbed a little bit closer we got to the season because he started gaining a little bit of buzz, but still then it was like mid to late 3rd-round pick he was going for. It wasn't anything special. Then unfortunately the kid gets hurt right after the first preseason game when it already looks like he's the backup because he was the first one to get the carries there in New York. So he misses some time there in preseason. And for me, for a guy that was like big on Tyrone Tracy, I was like, dang, I hope that doesn't set him back too far. And sure enough, to start the year, he's only getting a carry, 2 carries. Oh man, he really blew up with 5 carries. Like it wasn't really going too far. Then he gets his opportunity when Devin Singletary goes down. And I love to see guys that make the most of their opportunities. And that's exactly what Tyrone Tracy did. He put up 129 yards and then even did a little bit through the air as well. Maybe not as much as I would have expected through the air. Being a former receiver, I kind of thought he would have done a little bit more at this point. But regardless, he already has 3 100-yard rushing games, which for context, Bijan Robinson last year had 2. Jahmyr Gibbs last year had 2. These were 2 of like the top
Yeah.
legendary running backs. And they both only put up 2 100-yard rushing games last season. So Tyrone Tracy, in really just a 5-6 game stretch here, has done leaps and bounds what I think anybody would have expected him to do. And I feel a little crazy saying it, but at this point, he has creeped all the way up to my dynasty running back 13. He is just on the cusp
Wow.
of becoming a top 12 dynasty running back for me. So I've been really, really impressed with what I've seen out of Tyrone Tracy, and I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. What are you, any thoughts on Tyrone?
Oh, I love Tracy coming out, man. If there's one thing I really want to point out, it's the fact that this is just his second season of playing the running back position, right? That
Yeah.
is really the most impressive part regarding this. I think that his game is so far from, polished. I think he has so much room for improvement. And the fact that he's, leading the NFL in rushing yards for, multiple games, like in multiple different weeks in just, his first 4 or 5 starts, like
Yeah.
that is just wild, man. Tracy, I think the sky is the limit. Garrett, man, I thought I was bullish, but you having him at RB 13, definitely takes the cake. But hey, I'm not going to push back on that. I love it, man. I think Tracy is more of a hold than anything as well. I know I
Yeah.
said that about Chuba.
Absolutely.
I do not view him as this late day 3 late day 3 pick in the NFL draft where you're like, ooh, I hit on him, or I probably drafted him in the 3rd or 4th round at my Dynasty rookie drafts. Let me go capitalize and sell him for 2 2s or like a late one. Like, no, that's not what I'm doing. I'm holding.
Yeah.
And I'm going to continue to win with him. Hell, if I could get like a top 3, top 4 pick in the 2025 draft, okay, you can take him
Sure.
off my hands. That's probably it. But I don't think you're going to get that type of return. But that's where I'm at right now with Tyrone Tracy Jr. I'm very bullish on him as well. So,
And honestly, so far from what I've seen, like, because that's kind of what where I thought I would be right now as well, is like I'll be a hold. But I was going through some of the trades in our Dynasty Nerds trade finder, and of course, I wish I would have had him up and ready to go. But it's like a 2nd and a 3rd, and like stuff like that, where I'm like, really, we're
mhm.
still like playing that game, and I think people are just trying to sell high and capitalize, and I get it, I understand, but I'm with you. Like this isn't one of those scenarios for me. I think this is legit. And yes, maybe it's only 2 to 3 years, but 2 to 3 years in Dynasty is an eternity. Rich says it on our podcast all the time. Go
Yep.
back and look at your team 3 years ago. You might not have a single player that was on your team. Like, it can change drastically over that time. So I wanted to give you the last word, so I only did 2. I wanted to give you the last guy here. Who's the last guy that you have that's been rising up your boards?
Yeah, and one final thing I want to say about Tyrone Tracy Jr. is you hope that your late 1st round pick turns into what Tyrone Tracy Jr.'s production has been so far. So why not hold, right? Why re-roll the dice when you've already got the boat, right? You know that meme I'm talking about from
Oh,
Family Guy.
100%.
So uh, to answer your question, Garrett, the final player is Darnell Mooney, right? Here
Nice.
is a player that I'll be the first to admit I was wrong, right? Hand up. We're right now we're yapping about players that have risen up our rankings the most. Man, talk about someone who is super low, not only in my rankings but consensus as well. That's Darnell Mooney. I want to apologize to him. I want to apologize to the Atlanta Falcons. Man, I clowned them. I was blown away when I got a notification one day this offseason. I think it was back in March when he got that $39 million 3-year contract extension. I thought the deal was egregious at the time. Now it's looking like a bargain. Only
Yeah.
$24 million guaranteed for Darnell Mooney. And here's what caught me off guard. Darnell Mooney, he's got more receiving yards than Drake London this season, right? Like insane type of production that we're seeing already through the first 10 weeks. And Drake London, he's been nothing short of spectacular this year, right?
Yes.
The Dynasty community was wildly bullish on him all off season. I know they've been really since day one, but he's living up to those expectations, Drake London, that is, and he's maybe even exceeding them. And then you've got Darnell Mooney, who's literally producing like a legitimate wide receiver 1 as well. So but before we get into the actual production, I want to talk about his usage. So Darnell Mooney ranks 2nd in snap share at 95.2% and 7th in routes run, 333. Garrett, that is exactly what we want to see, man. 5th in
Absolutely.
air yards, 6th in deep targets. The opportunity, it's clearly there. Darnell Mooney is simply making the most of it. And now we're going to dive into the production.
All right.
Mooney has amassed 684 yards. That's a pace of 1,163, which would be a career high, right? He ranks 7th in the NFL in touchdowns. Okay, so and if you watch Atlanta's game this past season when they played the Saints, Mooney got tackled on the 1, right? So his numbers could be looking even better. He's currently the wide receiver 8 in fantasy points, coming off 3 consecutive games of 85 plus receiving yards. Look, I know Mooney's had 1,000-yard season under his belt. I know he did that back in 2021. I know he's gifted, but the dude has more receiving yards than CeeDee Lamb. I found that really
Bonkers.
interesting, right? Like if you told me that 10 weeks ago, I'd say there's precisely a 0% chance that happens at this point in the season. Darnell Mooney, he leads the NFL in fantasy points on 3rd and 4th downs. That really caught me off guard as well. And this I'll tell you what, like this seriously makes me question Chicago's internal scouting. And I say that because like they listen to their actions. They let Darnell Mooney walk, right? Then they spend early day 3 draft capital as a 4th round pick and spend more money to acquire 32-year-old Keenan Allen. And then Chicago also traded away the 32nd overall pick to get Chase Claypool. I know that's a little ways away now, but like
Sure.
these are some of their past actions. Just found that really interesting, right? Really concerning to tell you the truth. But
Sure.
to get back on track, I just want to say hats off. Darnell Mooney's crushing it. He's earned all the praise that he's been receiving this season. So good for Darnell Mooney, man.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a great call. And he's flown up the board for me as well. When I look at Darnell Mooney in where I had him early on in the season, it was embarrassingly low. Like I want to say he was wide receiver like 59, 62. Like it was in that range. Like it was not high at all. He's flown up the board. He's in the late 30s for now right now, and that still feels too low. Like I feel like I still should be moving him up a little bit higher, knowing how much that offense can produce. So yeah, he's a great call there. So hopefully some of these guys are players that you can kind of take a look at. Take a look at your own boards. What are players that have been flying up your boards? And the biggest thing is, how can we identify guys before they start to do this? Because if you can acquire them on the cheap, then you could just capitalize on all that value, whether it's on your team or through a trade. So Austin, this was a really fun show. Great talking with you. Remind them again real quick, where can they find you on Twitter and anything else you want to plug?
Yes, sir. At Austin Abbott FF. I'm primarily on Twitter. I have a Patreon as well. Link in bio if you want to check it out. Would greatly appreciate it. But again, DMs are always open. Always happy to talk ball. My main goal, I just want to provide value, man. And I just genuinely enjoy talking with the community. So shout out to you, Garrett. Shout out to the Dynasty Nerds, man. You guys are the best.
Appreciate you guys. Keep tuning into the Dynasty Nerds YouTube page. So many good things coming. We've got live shows that we're doing, videos that are dropping, shorts that are out, like all kinds of stuff. So stay tuned. We'll see you guys next time.